listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to U.S. Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings. We are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one. Cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire. Anti-black. We pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country to win. You need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Welcome to Reset Race, where we talk about race, politics, and how those things intersect for those of us who descend from chattel slavery here in the United States. I'm Michael Graham of Actify Press, and today we're going to introduce the crew as always, as we always do. We have a special guest, Miss Connie Collins, the Queen of Clubhouse, and she's going to introduce herself. Connie, can you introduce yourself to the peoples?
Hi, I'm Connie Collins. I am, I guess you would say, an ardent social justice activist. I'm a person that tries to keep up with everything that impacts Black Americans, and I am a reparationist. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming by, Connie. All right, so we go to the crew. Of course, we start off with the Khaleesi. Sam, let them talk to the people.
I'm gonna keep it short today because, I feel like I used most of my smoke last week on the Fred Hampton leftists. So, since Rome said we clout chasers, I'm gonna breathe fire like I do all the time. And we're gonna keep it pushing. So you can see me at me 17 trillion on Twitter, and we be here on the show. So let's get it going.
Bet. John, talk to him, man.
Yeah, what's up? John C., average American Negro, back with the fam. We got our guest Connie here. I'd like to welcome her to the show. Now, I mean, I ain't about, getting it together though, but we about to go in, do what we usually do, and let's do it. Let's do what we do.
All right, Mud is last but not least, of course. And after he introduces himself, he's going to introduce the video, and then we'll get it cooking.
Yeah, they call me Mud. You can find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Clubhouse @oflineage. Also, Better Dose TV coming soon. Sam and I got something special for y'all. We're going to start doing these documentaries, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But yeah, let's get into the show. Today, we're going to be covering an interview with Coleman Hughes. This was on Just Thinking Out Loud with the host, Desiree.
All right, bet. All right, so you said they're discussing race and ethnicity and all that good stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're talking about affirmative action, diversity, identity, basically all the topics to touch on when you're talking about race in America.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Just Thinking Out Loud. My name is Desiree. Today, I am speaking with Coleman Hughes, who is a writer at Quillette. He's also a student at Columbia studying philosophy. And he has a blog over at afrooptimist.blogspot.com if you want to go and check it out.
All right, cool. All right. Those of you who don't know Coleman Hughes, he is, as Ty calls him, Tidy Whitey Boy. And he's also he's a black conservative, black / Puerto Rican conservative dude that was on the House floor talking down about reparations in service of the Republicans.
Mr. Coleman Hughes is a columnist for Quillette and has worked as a freelance opinion writer since January 2018. He's had pieces published in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the National Review, the City Journal, and the Spectator. He's studying philosophy at Columbia University, and we appreciate your attendance, and you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Cohen, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the committee. It's an honor to testify on a topic as important as this one. Nothing I'm about to say is meant to minimize the horror and brutality of slavery and Jim Crow. Racism is a bloody stain on this country's history, and I consider our failure to pay reparations directly to freed slaves after the Civil War to be one of the greatest injustices ever perpetrated by the U.S. government. But I worry that our desire to fix the past compromises our ability to fix the present.
One eternity later.
So the moment you give me reparations, you've made me into a victim without my consent. Not just that, you've made 1/3 of Black Americans who poll against reparations into victims without their consent. And Black Americans have fought too long for the right to define themselves, to be spoken for in such a condescending manner.
All right, let's get it popping.
And Connie, when you're listening to this, if you can't take it anymore, just be like, stop. We'll stop the video.
So I don't know where to start. From what I know, you speak a lot about race in the United States, and particularly about your upbringing and your awakening to a different narrative than the one that you were taught, and the shift in your own perspective as well. So could you start with that, maybe?
Yeah. I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in a mixed suburb, maybe 30% Black, 60% white, good, fairly integrated. And I didn't think much about race growing up until middle school, high school. And at my high school, when I was a sophomore or junior, I went to a conference out of town called the People of Color Conference. I was they paid my way for 2 or 3 days to go to Houston, and with a group of maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000 kids. And we did workshops on all these ideas that I hadn't heard, intersectional feminism, the tenets of critical race theory, ways of looking at yourself and society in racial terms, and of analyzing things in terms of oppression and internalized oppression. So that was the first time I was exposed to what I would now call social justice ideology. And at the time, I was very compelled by it. I thought it was very moving. I thought it was certainly true. And I had heard no counterpoints to this view, so I basically absorbed it. And I went back to my school. I gave a speech to my school when I was a junior in high school about internalized oppression, sort of reporting on what I had learned at this conference, sharing it with the school, the idea that Black people internalize the stereotypes and the narratives of white supremacy and live out those stereotypes. And you can't even really escape white supremacy in the privacy of your own mind. That's the view. And my school got kind of increasingly radical, and I'm somewhat ashamed to say I played a part in that.
You did.
But yeah. But after I left high school, I began reading and listening to podcasts outside my bubble and meeting people from different parts of the country. And slowly, this was right around the time that Black Lives Matter was really kicking into gear, 2014. Started questioning what I had been taught at that seminar and in general, and started listening and reading people like John McWhorter, Glenn Lowry, And one by one, many of the ideas I had found compelling and ways of looking at race began to not seem very compelling to me, and it began to seem like they didn't really have much of a basis in helping Black people, and were more about pushing grievances and just dredging up grievances from history, making them fresh in people's minds. People like me who would have no objective reason to feel a grievance towards the only country I'll ever live in, but when the litany of injustice against Black people is rehearsed over and over again, you can kind of congeal your identity as a Black person around that grievance narrative, even if you have no real reasons to feel those grievances. So
before you heard all of this critical race theory, would you have described yourself as a Black person with a Black identity? Because that's something I've encountered from day one, from many Black Americans, but which I wasn't really used to in terms of how much of a primary component it is in the concept of self. Like, were you always like that? And a second question as a follow-up is, why do you think you were susceptible to that kind of narrative also?
Very good questions. The first, no, I did not always think of myself as a Black person. When I was growing up, I knew Daddy was Black and Mommy was Puerto Rican. So I viewed myself mathematically as half Puerto Rican, half Black, and therefore mixed race. I didn't particularly care about that identity. I thought it was kind of cool to be mixed, just because it was kind of fun to say as like a 9-year-old, but there was no deep sense of self invested in the mixedness or the sense of being biracial. It was just more or less a neutral fact about me. Mm-hmm. I think over time I started calling myself Black rather than half Puerto Rican, half Black, not consciously or intentionally, but it just happened. And I think in retrospect, the reason I started doing that seems to me to be because there's much more to be gained in terms of social capital by calling yourself Black. You're allowed to, how do I put it? You don't see as much Hispanic identity politics. There's less to be gained from emphasizing the half Puerto Rican side of oneself in the current.
Y'all ain't got nothing to say about that.
I was gonna let him cook a little bit.
we can finish the last like 27 seconds. It's the longest we're gonna ever let somebody talk, but we can finish it. And
let him cook.
Then go from there, because he dropped some bombs right there, didn't he? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let him cook.
Milieu, in the current environment, in the spaces I run, being Black gets you something that being Hispanic doesn't really. So I think unconsciously I picked up on that and started emphasizing the Black half of my genome, identity, whatever, ancestry.
Yeah.
All right. So basically he's Black for social capital. Not shocked at all. But Connie, you got any input since you hanging out with us today?
It just bothered me that he said there was no social capital in being Latino. So then, as I listen to this whole, one hand, we're victims. On another hand, there's some social capital to be gained. So I was a little lost on that. Is he saying, okay, if you can't milk the victimhood of being Black, why be a Latino?
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think he what he did was he took that capital and packaged it up and sold it to the Republicans. Basically, what he's done. But John, what you got on this? I'm sorry, Sam. Where you at, Sam?
No, I'm here. I just find it funny. Like, he just dropped bombs everywhere. He was just like, growing up, I never really thought about my racial identity. I looked at myself as biracial. Then one day I decided I was Black because there was more social capital in being Black than being Latino. And most likely now he's a Republican because you can make more money as a Black Republican than you can as a Black Democrat. That's all I got to say. I smell it. I smell it. I smell somebody out here hooking for a check. All right. Mud? Or was it
Yeah.
John? John. Or yeah, whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't live the experience of being a Black person, but well, when it was advantageous for him, where he could actually use it to I guess gain social standings, then he decided he could shoehorn himself into being Black. And we see this with a lot of people who have our skin color, but don't actually have this lived experience. When it's beneficial for them, they just hop in and out of our identity, and they use this sometimes against us. They go and misrepresent us. They pretend to be us, and then speak against what we're trying to achieve politically. And this is what his whole career has been, from what I can see.
Bet. John, what you got?
Yeah, no, he just basically admitting that he cosplaying. You feel me? He put on black like
Exactly.
it was a costume and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so he really broke down how some people that come over here, it's a particular way they do it too. Like
You were
how they
talking
act like they're Black American and they do this and they do that. But he just broke down how he's cosplaying, how he really didn't. If he seen the pathway for him to either get on or some shit like that as a Latino, but like if he was accepted as a Latino, because they got a lot of colorism, like, what I mean? They don't like Black Latinos don't generally represent Latinos in America, like, so he had to lean towards the Black side, put on our ethnicity like it's a motherfucking costume. So.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys this. Did anybody find it interesting that he said he's Black and Puerto Rican? And Puerto Ricans are generally, by the broader society, considered Black Latinos. And so this differentiation of what type of Black you are it seems to be something that keeps popping up in the diaspora. And I don't want to jump ahead to another clip that I'm sure you're going to play. But, this, like he said, he thought it was cute when he was 9 to be a Black and Latino. Then in junior high, he went and did some critical race intersectionality program. And then he got to high school and started reading, who did he say? John McWhorter.
So what's wrong with the school? One thing that's wrong with the school, which today is run by Black people, which is another chink in the idea that racism is the issue. But it's run by Black people, and education schools are what taught most of the teachers there. And since about 1969, most education schools in the United States don't teach teachers how to teach. Instead, they often teach teachers about liberal and leftist ideology, and they explicitly tell teachers that their job is to teach children how to see the world as a good-hearted political activist. Now, that comes from a good place in the heart, but a lot of those teachers, through no fault of their own, have been grievously undertrained by an education school orthodoxy that is extremely anti-racist. The people who run these schools think of themselves as fighting the good fight, but it means that they're teachers who forget that they don't know how to keep order. They don't know how to teach anybody how to read.
I want to touch on something that Mud said. It's a term we use a lot, lived experience. And I think one of the things that we as FBA, NBA, Native Black Americans, or freedmen, or descendants of chattel slavery, whatever we identify as, when we say lived experience, we don't just mean this lifetime, right? We're the culmination of several lifetimes of suffering and extraction and exploitation. So, what the lives that created us are important, right? Black life in America is not plug and play, right? You can't come here, share a certain amount of melanin with us and start to talk about our issues. I'm not saying, okay, yeah, he's half Black American, apparently. That's fine. But sometimes you have to understand when we say lived experience, it's not just in this lifetime, but this dude obviously has packaged up his Blackness to use it to his advantage and sell it off to the highest bidder. So, and there's always money to be made shitting on Black people. So it is what it is. Anybody else got anything before we go to this next clip?
We've always kind of thought of ourselves as regular Black, versus like when people talk about, Ethiopians, Jamaicans, they're like an exotic form of black in an American context. So what we've seen over and over again is black people kind of identify with something else versus just being regular black, because that gave you social clout. And what he's saying is that as for his form of politics, it was better for him to just identify as regular black, because he could step in the role and misrepresent us.
These are facts. These are facts.
You were talking about the double standards, like black people can say certain things, but white people aren't allowed to say it. That was actually my quote unquote red pill moment. Because a lot of people don't know this because I don't talk about it, but because I wasn't like you, like I definitely wasn't part of a wave of individuals who were trying to kind of be activists for giving a voice to black oppression or anything like that. But I was definitely sympathetic to it. Like I didn't write it off when I heard it, because they're, you know, like you said, the kernel of truth thing, except I think back to the past, not really to the present. There's a history of, you know, this transatlantic slave trade and all of that stuff. And I do think, I don't really care about it that much, which sounds really weird, but I do think there's also a history of people trying to oppress groups of people. Like I think that has happened in history. And there are people who would want to do that today as well. So I think I was definitely sympathetic to it in the past. But my moment of realization that something was off was the double standards. My very first video was me talking about how there were people just writing off white people who they'd never met before as being slave owners. And I heard that, and I was so used to everyone talking about racism from white people, which I believe exists, but I'd never heard anyone talk about this very obvious thing that I'd seen up close and personal, and that when I hadn't really seen the opposite yet. And I was like, this is really weird that I don't hear anything about it. So that was, to me...
Wait, what did you not hear anything about?
Oh, racism from black people. Like I was always
towards white people?
Yes, I was always hearing about racism from everybody else towards black people, which is true, which exists, I think. But I'd never, ever heard it the other way. And I think it's most allowed from colored people of color.
Yeah. Colored people of color.
Yeah, I was trying to say the right thing.
It is strange that you'll get fired if you say colored people, but if you say people of color, which is the same words in reverse, you're woke. It's very strange.
Yeah, and there's something else I wanted to talk about was kind of or different perspectives.
Okay, so only thing I want to say about what she had to say is, nobody said all white people were slave masters or slave holders. Nobody said that, but a lot of, I don't understand how is saying, but even, let's just say that we were like, all white people were slave masters. How's that racist?
I don't know, but the closest thing I could think to what she's talking about is calling them colonizers. You know, like from Black Panther. Yeah, that's the closest thing I can think of. You know, because I mean, most of us deal with white folks the way we deal with them. When, you know, we take them, they get to be individuals, right? There is some resentment on our side from centuries of oppression, which is logical, right? If you've been oppressed by a people, it's logical to be concerned about how those people are going to treat you. I don't know. This framing makes it seem like, you know, white folks, like we're victimizing white people and we're dragging them out of their houses and shit like that. This is crazy. You know what I mean? Individual bigotries, that's not oppression. That's, I don't like you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like she has no racial consciousness. And she said Black Americans have this history of the transatlantic slave trade. And it's like, I'm listening to this and I'm like, wait, aren't you Jamaican?
We do have some data from 1611, which shows that there were 558 African slaves and around 1,300 Spaniards at that time. But within 50 years of colonisation, so there's colonisation, Britain had established sugar estates and they were importing more slaves from West Africa. So the number had gone up to 45,000. And then by the time Britain abolished slavery in 1834, Jamaica had a population of more than 311,000 slaves compared to 16,700 Europeans. So Esther, is it possible to work out the extent to which Jamaica economically benefited from the free slave workers?
Well, yes, what we know is that Jamaica is the largest colony and where the largest amount of Africans were trafficked, then it meant that Britain, in particular the British colonial government, benefited the most. And what we know, there's about 42% of the industry was generated due to trafficking of African labour, forced labour on plantations in Jamaica. So today we can sort of work out the equivalent of how much Britain actually benefited.
Don't you you're so disconnected from your blackness that you're not even identifying with your own fucking history. Like, it's weird. And then like she never, like, she's saying in her whole life she never seen white people be racist. That's what, like, because she kept saying, I believe, I think they do. Like, she never saw it. She never experienced it. The only thing she experienced is some black person speaking about white people in generality, saying that, you know, there's all slave owners, and that's the great racist crime that she's experienced in her whole fucking life.
Something that I don't think I've ever seen. Somebody dismiss all white people as slave owners. I don't think I've ever seen that.
I've never seen that.
Even if it fucking happened, because you know, there's so many fucking different type of people in this world. There's probably somebody that did it.
Yes, somebody said it. The same way don't make people say all white people are racist.
It's the same.
So the hyperbole.
But you know what?
We can find a million examples of white people who say we're all thugs, we're all you know, criminals and all this shit. So yeah, so you found a black person that said it. So the fuck what? You're telling me that's the only like experience you have with like racism, and that's the only example that you can draw on that one thing? Like, you've never seen a white person do some shit? I don't believe this.
But if you notice where they're relating is on this need to erase history to justify, you know, a experience, a reality. So you know, they know nothing about anything, and they just want to erase everything so that they can, you know, sorry for my pejorative, but just going around.
Yeah, I think. I'm sorry, John. You didn't go yet. Go ahead, John.
I'm on my best behavior today, man. I'm trying to be professional and all that.
Why start now? Go ahead. Go ahead, John. Do your thing, brother.
But well, basically, she, you know, this is like straight up right wing dog whistling, like, you know what I mean? The reverse race. She basically, that's why she was trying to get around the world, but she basically like, well, you know, that's it. That's all I got. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to let y'all go. I'm chilling.
Yeah, this is my thinking. I think, like John said, they realizing there's a bag to be made by shitting on us. Surprise, surprise. That's never happened before, you know. So, and at the end of the day, that's what it is. Because if, you know, you're from Jamaica, you don't understand transatlantic slave trade. You don't understand the impacts of racism. Yeah, I understand in Jamaica, black is the default as far as race is concerned. I get that, but there's a reason why you're there in Jamaica. You know what I mean? There's a reason why your people are on that island. So this is like a denialism we're talking about here, to my mind. Like, because she seems like she believes this. She seems like she's going, like we talk about Bree sometimes. Seems like she's going through an existential crisis here. I don't understand what's going on, but it is what it is. All right, let's go.
For me, coming here, and I'm sure for many other people who immigrate to the U.S., who there are a lot of, it's like you're thrown into a whole new game where you have to learn all this terminology and learn what's like right to say and what's not right to say. And it's almost as if the clutch of America's dark racist past cannot let go enough to allow fresh perspectives to come in that could possibly shine light or possibly change the way things are and the way people interact. Everybody has to come in and like lockstep with the identities that they've already
Freeze.
Exactly.
Stop this
granted.
shit. Jesus.
Freeze. How you're coming to another country? You fit in with their mores. You fit in with their culture, right? If you bring your own culture, that's fine. That's fine. Bring your own culture, but know that you're a visitor in this house.
You are a guest.
You are a guest in this house, at best.
But
We don't go anywhere else and try to, you know what? I'm like, exactly. I'm like Connie handle this. Go ahead, Connie. Go ahead. Talk to the people.
Please, Connie.
so you left your history behind. You left your lived experience and your reality behind, and you want a fresh start in a country that has the most heinous history. And she says she wants a fresh perspective. What perspective would that be? So they're telling us all through this, like, don't be sensitive. You guys are butthurt and all of this. And it's like, wouldn't you be butthurt if you've been going through 400 years of oppression? What fresh start? What qualifies you to come in to tell us how to feel and not, she says we're overly sensitive. So your perspective is, I come from a country that I left, but I'm going to come here and tell you not to be hurt because I look at this as the land of opportunity because you Black Americans built something for me to get a fresh start. Or she wants Black immigrants to come to the United States and have their input on not only our lived experience, but our history. And that boils my blood. But not only that, again, it's this entitlement. It's crazy. Like she has a split personality. She wants to separate herself as a Black person because she doesn't want to honor, you know, what to say and what not to say about Black Americans. That's really what she's saying to me, right? She's not talking about universally, you know, you don't say hurtful things about other ethnicities. What she's struggling with, I don't know if you guys know who Christina Greer is, and she did a study. Well, Christina Greer is a professor. She did a study, and she said she was shocked when she did the study in New York about Blackness, and she interviewed a lot of Black immigrants. They were resentful that they had to come to this country and be Black. They said, why do I have to be a Black American? Why can't I just be an American like all the other immigrants?
So when we were on the Cape, the facilitator asked us to close our eyes, which we all did. And he said, now raise your hand if your parents told you when you get to Tufts, don't be messing around with those Black folks. So I thought that was a relatively odd question to ask. So I opened up my eyes and I realized that everyone's hands were raised except for the 6 Black Americans who were on the trip. So there were a few things that I was curious about. One, almost everyone on the trip identified as a Black ethnic in some sort. They were Caribbean and Black American. And 2, that there was some conversation that African and Caribbean parents were having with their kids before they came to this institution. So that sort of started this conversation that I'd have with friends, and then it turned into this intellectual project over the years. So that's the backdrop. I also wanted to look at Black ethnics and immigration and Black identity because of the ramifications for the allocation of resources and representation. And so there's this, you know, oftentimes we talk about scarce resources in the United States. It's a perception of scarce resources. We have abundance of resources, right? If we wanted to go to war tomorrow, we totally could. We have the money. We just don't dole it out in ways that we could and should. And so when you have communities competing for resources, what does that mean when there's a sense of competition against another group? So instead of working together, why is it that certain groups are buttressed together? And then lastly, I was curious about the shifting and blurring of the color line, as W.B. Du Bois talked about the color line. And it's getting a little more blurry when we have this nuanced understanding of what it means to be Black, when we have more than just Black and white groups in a dichotomous relationship. So that's kind of where I wanted to start with some of this questioning, because we know that Black Americans are this rich and dynamic group of people. But I was also really fascinated because, separate from Native American populations, Black Americans are the only group in the United States who are not voluntary immigrants. They did not come here seeking a better life with a suitcase and a dream. They were brought here through the process of chattel slavery to uphold an economic institution and build a nation for free. So what happens when you have other people who look like you generations later coming to this very same nation with a suitcase and a dream and believing in the substance of a country that has been quite cruel and harsh on a host of levels? So when I wrote the book, my data is from 2005 because that's when I was in graduate school. The gray hair can attest. The book was published in 2013. I mentioned Du Bois. It's the winner of the W.B. Du Bois Award from the National Conference of Black Political Scientists, because I actually extended this conversation of Black identity and Black ethnicity in ways that we just hadn't seen before. And so the Black population right now, back then it was 12%, now it's roughly 13%. But Black Americans, or Blacks in America, have moved from being the second largest group in the nation to the third largest group. And so it's now white Americans first, Latinx population second, and now Black Americans third. And so that even created an interesting conversation with this idea of Blacks coming to the United States, but still not creating the same number of folks to maintain the second place status. And so now it's third place and slowly falling behind the growing Latinx and actually Asian American population. The number of undocumented Asian Americans is incredibly large and growing by the moment. And so I chose to look at New York City as a way to expand this conversation of Black ethnicity, because New York City has such a diverse Black ethnic group. So not just historically, we can think about Harlem and the Harlem Renaissance and all of the Caribbeans who interacted with Black Americans who came in from the Great Migration. But we know that in Brooklyn, it's basically a mini microcosm of the entire Caribbean. If anyone's ever been to the Caribbean Day Parade or gone to various neighborhoods throughout Brooklyn, we know that there's first, second, third generation folks from the Caribbean. So I was looking at the total US population, the population of Black folks, which when I was doing my study was about 35 million, now it's about 40 million, and then the total foreign-born Black population. At the time when I was doing my study, Africans was about 1.25 million, and for Afro-Caribbeans, 2.25 million. That number is a little dodgy just because, one, we have undocumented populations, and two, how people choose to self-identify can make our data just a little questionable, especially if we don't ask follow-up questions about where both of your parents were born or your grandparents. And those are questions that I asked when I was getting my data. But depending on the type of neighborhood you live in, if you live with a large group of, say, Black people, you may say, well, I am Jamaican, I am Nigerian, and these are all the diverse Black people I live with. If you live in a community with a very small percentage of Black people, you may just say that you're Black because everyone else around you, the few people are around you, are Black as well. And so the safety in numbers. And so I'm really interested in kind of getting to the idea of what would it take for us to really have substantive coalition building as we get this influx of diverse immigrants coming to the United States with a different mindset about what this country can and cannot do. But how do we work together and not just sort of an electoral space, but also obviously in an economic space? But we know that there's this little idea called descriptive versus substantive representation when we think about elected officials. And so how do we not only get someone who looks like us, but substantively represents us? And that gets a little more complicated when you have communities that are both Black and also immigrant. And so do you want someone who's a representative who's just Black? Or do you want someone who's Black and also an immigrant, but how do they best represent the entire community? Whereas with Afro-Caribbeans, the reason why they weren't invested in this idea of the American dream is that many of them expressed, especially second generation Afro-Caribbeans, were saying, well, I came here at the same time as someone from Korea or from Italy or from any other non-Caribbean or non-African nation. And why is it that I am not able to advance in the same ways and as quickly? And it's because my Black skin is holding me back because of the racist institutions and the anti-Black notions in this nation. And so the frustration of the residential segregation, not that they didn't want to be with other Black people, but seeing the frustration of other non-Black immigrants were able to incorporate into this non-Blackness much more easily. So whereas before, before the Irish were able to become white and the Italians were able to become white and Jews were able to become white and all the other groups from Europe, it was sort of whites and non-whites. And everybody else was in this non-white category, except for sort of the framers and the founding fathers and those folks. And now, looking at immigrants, this is almost a conversation of Blacks and non-Blacks, right? So you have Black Americans who are perceived to be last place, and you have everyone else fighting not to be in that category. So what does that do to relationships with Black Americans when it seems that everyone's scurrying not to be with them?
This resentment towards being associated with the bottom caste. That's what her study showed. And that's what this girl is doing, is saying, but that's not our history. And like Mike said, no, it's not your history. You left your history in your country. You came here and you don't want to honor the hard work, the 400 years that Black Americans put in to make it possible for you as a dark-skinned person to have the opportunities that you have. So you don't want to put in the work to continue the struggle. So you would rather disassociate and say, hey, we live in this utopian society where there is no skin color, there is no racism. And it's actually very sick. It's demented. The reason this country discusses Black history, racism, white rage, is because it is the foundation of this country. So, what would make you think you're going to come to a country and not A, be willing to discuss what's happened, B, work to change it? You know, what would I look like? I always say this, going to Nigeria. And then I'm like, why do we have to discuss the Biafra War? Why do we have to discuss the rift between the Hausa and the Fulani and the Igbo and the Yoruba? Why? I just want to be a Black American. I wasn't a tribe before I came here. I'm just accustomed to Blackness. Can we all just be Black? Yes, that is a valid thing of me to ask in another country, but it is not an honorable and valid thing for me to try to impose. I have to listen, learn, know the history, understand why these people have a rift and a split, right?
Here's the thing for me, like, honestly, I don't care if they identify with Blackness or identify with our struggle. The thing is that just stay out of our way. Why do you think that you could come here and like try to undermine like our political agendas? Like we bring up our history and we bring up all this stuff because we're still fighting for social change, a social change that we have not realized yet. But you think that you're going to come here and with your fresh immigrant perspective and you're going to change our society to fit the way you want to see things? No, you don't get to skip the line in front of us and try to shape our country. That's not how this works. Like I said in the Asian video, they made an alliance. It's just not with us. They made an alliance with white America. So this whole video is about appeasing white America.
There it is. There it
Well,
is.
when you say stay out of our way, you know, I think it's more than staying out of our way. Stay out of our way. Stop acting like us. If you understand that there's a distinction of the different types of Blackness, and you don't even want to be Black, you just want to be a Jamaican American, right? You just want to be a Kenyan American, then just stay out of our culture. You don't get to come and join in a hip hop culture and then say we all Black and make money from everything we do. You don't get to vibe like us while telling us not to be us.
well, I've been a little stoic, sometimes overly stoic, to the point where people feel that I'm cold, but I never mean to be. My parents, they did the thing where you make your kid do every freaking thing, like dance, music, and whatever, you know, keep you off the streets. So I did music, I did violin and piano, wasn't really into it for a long time. Then I got into drums when I was like 8 years old. I was in this thing called Drums of Thunder where like 9-year-olds at my public school would play halftime at Giants games and Knicks games. And it was like all the adults would be like, oh, they're so cute and they're playing the drums. That's when I started to love music, I think. And then I went to my middle school and I was in band for the first time, in like concert band, and it was my favorite class by far. So that's when it really started, when I became obsessed. Okay, off top, artists I admire, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, J.J. Johnson, Ben Van Gelder, Earl Sweatshirt, Tyler the Creator, Chance the Rapper, Angel Olsen, Lester Young, Nat King Cole, Earth, Wind and Fire, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. Oh my God. It's just a stupid amount more, but for every reason, those are the people who came to my mind just now. The boundaries between genres are kind of artificial anyway, so I just try to do what feels natural, and it ends up, I'm so influenced by jazz and hip hop that it ends up blending if I'm just being honest and in the moment and natural. There's something about hip hop that is so coming out of jazz to me that it's like, I don't know, it's like seeing a face that you used to know, or like seeing someone's child who looks exactly like them. There's no doubt in my mind that both genres, just as a matter of historical fact, came from black people. That you can't argue against that. But I am very much in the camp of anyone who takes music seriously, regardless of skin color, I respect. It doesn't belong to any individual. I think anyone who claims that is kind of full of themselves.
Today I skipped the caffeine out of fear it would make me anxious. Today I tried disappearing, but like a still life I stayed in today. Swallowed rejection and tasted like rotten eggs. Today I got an erection and pasted it to my leg. Today I got fucking bored of this song and pronounced it dead. Today I stopped watching Pornhub and thought about you instead. Today I purchased some vitamins. Today I purchased some vitamins targeted towards women and took them. Today I fight against all of my intuitions.
Yeah, so their thing is, and they have buzzwords about us. We're a problem. We're problematic, right? And what they're saying is, can you be quiet? They literally think if they just come here and just smile and giggle and cozy up to them, everything is going to just work itself out. And it's a crazy notion when your countries have been destroyed by the same people in the country in which we live, we Black Americans, and you want us to what? Just go, oh, okay, slavery was, whatever, 400 or 500 years ago. We'll take that off the table. But now they want us to take peonage, convict leasing, redlining, horrific medical experimentations, Jim Crow, denial of GI, SSI, all you guys, I'm preaching to the choir here. The lynchings, the looting of all of our towns, like it has never stopped. And here we are in 2021, and they're seeing us locked out of our own economy that we built. They are seeing us lynched by the police. They are seeing us denied equal access, but they think that their Black is better. And somehow they can circumvent all that, and we should just
being granted or given just because of how they look. And I think that America is losing a lot because of that. Because yes, you have a terrible past, you're still wounded, you're still trying to figure this stuff out, but maybe you should, listen to people who don't necessarily come from your society. So maybe they could change how things are a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to talk to you more about this. I wonder well, let me make a couple points first. One is, I totally agree with you that, I mean, all the language policing stuff, ironically, it's probably falls hardest on people for whom English is a second language, namely immigrants. So if you're going to tell me that anyone who doesn't say they every time, I mean, I call people they who want to be called they as a gender neutral pronoun. I just think it's the respect that I would grant anyone, if I want to be called something, if that's important to me. So that's my personal philosophy. But if you're going to be so militant about it that anyone who doesn't use the right pronoun that you invented yesterday is going to get thrown under the bus, who do you think that's going to hit hardest? Not native speakers of English. It's going to be English as a second language, people from Mexico and Guatemala. If you're going to say Latinx, for example, I don't know if you've heard this word yet,
I thought
but
it was
it's
like
now it's Latinx.
Okay, I don't know. I always say that when I read
It's a
it.
neologism that has no basis in the Spanish language. Spanish, every noun is either feminine or masculine. It's even more bifurcated than English. Like, people coming over the border speaking Spanish are not they're calling you Latino or Latina. And they're going to be the people who are least able to absorb the very rapid language changes. So I think that's a very good point.
I actually never thought about it in the way you just put it. Like, I never thought about the language like that.
Yeah. And it's ironic because they also feel themselves to be on the side of the xenophiles against the xenophobes. They feel themselves to be on the side of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
But
John, what you got? You got anything on that mess?
This is some bullshit. This is some bullshit, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm like, how can other groups of people come to us and be upset about us? And just because they come here. A lot of black immigrants don't really. Some of them. Well, I'm not gonna say a lot. I think some of them though. They're particular ones because they usually got the loudest voice. They come here and they have no basic understanding of our history here. They don't understand what being black in America really means until they get here, because they watching the Cosby Show and they living in their country and they just thinking that, oh, I gotta go to America. Then they get here and realize this shit real. Like, a lot of them be so surprised. Like, I remember I was on Clubhouse. I don't know if I brought it up before, but it was an African refugee that came from like some crazy ass country. He was poor, whatever. He came here. He had like a host family, and he was living in Baltimore. And he was going to public school as a child in Baltimore. He was like, this shit is like school back home. He couldn't believe it. He was like, what the fuck? Like, this is what black people, yeah.
Wake up, Megan. I'm looking to wake up calls a bitch.
So they're saying, oh, if you come here, you may not know what the new terms are. Well, then you should sit your immigrant butt down and learn the lay of the land, understand the racial climate, understand the economics of this country, and be quiet. It's relatively that simple. But they say, I'm in this country for opportunity. Then sit your opportunistic ass down and work on your opportunity and stay out of our black business. If you keep saying you're not black, you don't like the term black, you don't want to be lumped in with black Americans, then keep your foreign black mouth closed. Your black ass has left your beautiful black country. Okay? You left that beautiful blackness. Now you came here and you're meeting the reality of the racial clash. But you don't want to be black, but you want to put that skin on. You want to cosplay. You want to come in with your culture vulture talons out and take what's ours and tell us, shh, be quiet. You are dealing with the beast that we've been dealing with, and you want to go, oh no, I don't want a part of this. Can y'all be quiet? Can if you're quiet, maybe they'll leave us alone. Oh, now you're in the us. Are you black now, huh? You black now? Oh, I see how this works.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Hey, Mud, go ahead real quick, and then we get to Sam. We ain't heard from Sam all day.
Yeah.
Quincy been quiet. What's up, sis? Damn, where you at?
You on mute, Sam. We can't hear you.
You guys already said it though. Like, we can't go anywhere else and do this, right? The five of us can't pack up, go to Nigeria, and get in the mix of their politics. So this alleged fake solidarity that we're just trying to throw on people doesn't exist. Like, a lot of groups look at America as a transient country. So they want to come and get what they can out of it and keep it pushing. And they have no problem shitting on the native population. And I blame this country for allowing that to happen. Like, you have to take care of your citizens, and just to keep bringing in people. And you're bringing in people who seem to have a disdain for the native population. That's a problem. I'm just saying, like, we all supposed to look the same, but you're treating me like white people are, like Latinos are, like Asians are, like all these other groups that are, that don't share our hue, and I don't consider them us either. But if you're gonna play like we are and play this "we're all black" game, then don't be divisive.
The irony.
Look,
go ahead, Connie.
See, they don't like the stigmas that come from their country, but they come here. Now, follow my train of thought. So you got the Caribbeans and the Africans coming from their countries, and they know that people view them as poor. They're trying to escape the stigma of being backwards, corrupt, criminal, all this stuff. Now you come to a country where the bottom caste are, again, Black people. But you don't want to be affiliated with any of that, because that's what you're escaping. That's what you're running from. Instead of being courageous and showing the world what you're really made of, you would rather come and shit on the people that have shown the world that Black is beautiful, that have shown the world what being a good humanitarian looks like, that's shown the world, our cultural contributions, our inventions. But you choose not to see any of that, because if you do, if you acknowledge it, that means you know that you have an obligation to be a part of that struggle. That's my take on why they have so much disdain.
Yo, the word that you brought up, Kanye, opportunistic, that fits everything that's happening in this video. Like,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you think about these people, all right, and of course, this is not all Black immigrants. Some Black immigrants come over here and they really are trying to be good allies and whatnot. But we do have a good portion of people who fit this mold. And it's not just that they're trying to reap the benefits and not claim Blackness. They're trying to undermine us. And it's, I don't know, it's like, so if you want to get into politics, right, but you don't want to identify with Blackness, like Connie said, you don't have to talk about race issues. There, especially you don't even have to talk about like American cultural issues. You can jump into politics and talk about strictly economics, capitalism versus socialism, or some shit like that. Make that your thing. But these Black people that come over here and get into politics, they never do that. They always focus on race issues while telling us that they don't care about race issues. It's the most insane thing, but they're doing it because it's a hustle. It is a hustle. They are using our situation, our experience as an opportunity for them.
What in your position are the big differences in terms of perspectives between Black Americans and Black Caribbeans?
I think the biggest thing is what you just said in terms of describing us as Black Caribbeans. Like, people don't describe themselves as black something. They would describe themselves like there are songs, like, it's not like there is no sense of that identity at all. like people care about that to a degree, but their primary identity is their ethnicity, which is different from their race. So that's what that I would say is probably the biggest thing. The other thing is that I don't think they are so butthurt about. That sounds. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but it's about things like it might annoy them. Like they might think that, say, like Trump is racist or something because of something they've heard, but it's not the end of the world, and they're not going to hate you because you even considered thinking about something different. And that's something also when I think about growing up and the intellectual environment that I was in. It was okay to think differently about sensitive topics. Like you could have an argument and it would be okay.
So did we not all hear her earlier talk about how she thinks white people might say racist shit, and now she's saying that black immigrants don't care if Trump says something racist? Like, this is a fucking game they are playing on this goddamn fucking show right now. Like, they're contradicting themselves so fucking badly, and like they act like we're not supposed to see this shit.
If you're a Sambolian, this is how you think, okay? So she just had the audacity to say, we get butt hurt. But let's think about this. We've been on Clubhouse, we've been on Twitter, and in real life, right? Facebook. If you say anything about their culture, they start yelling and screaming.
But she's talking about her opinion now. Nobody's trying to kill her. Nobody's chasing her down with torches and pitchforks, right? She's talking about opinion. People disagree. That's what happens in discourse, right? Just because what she's saying doesn't make sense to us and likely doesn't make sense to her people in general, right? Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. She's just, like Mud said, he's just playing a game. Sam, what you got?
Again, it's the same shit. Like you said, it's like, oh, well, we don't think about race, then, oh, well, we don't care if Trump's racist. Latinos are the same way, even though we're talking about black immigrants. The reason why they don't care when Trump says people come from shithole countries or this, that, and the other, they don't look at themselves that way. So they can disassociate themselves from those comments. So again, this is just annoying. Like here she's explaining that race and ethnicity is different, but she's like, we don't focus on our race all the time. Black Americans are our own ethnicity. So don't worry about it, because very soon y'all won't have to worry about people talking about the black race in the United States as being oppressed. They're going to be talking about black Americans and what should be done for black Americans who descend from chattel slavery. Are we ready to go back to the clips? Or MG, you're muted. You gotta.
I'm sorry. People that are opportunistic, new term for me, they don't think long term. They think I'm trying to get this bag now. Whatever happens, happens. All right. Anybody got anything else? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I got something, man. Like, she was saying, like, in our countries, we don't talk about race like that. So you from an 80-70% black country, like that's why the racial dynamic is different. Like, we live with the people that raped us, like these people we live in the same country with them. Sam already said she could find the people that descend from the people who own her family. Mm-hmm. So the construct of race is different here. You know what I mean? Like, and we are one of the few black people that live in a majority white country. I mean, live with white people in a majority white country for hundreds of years. Like,
you all ready for me to play some more of this?
Yes, ma'am.
You know?
Yeah.
Like even about something like that, such
Yeah.
as race or some topic like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my friend Camille Foster, I don't know if you have heard of him.
I've heard
Brilliant.
the name.
Yeah, brilliant guy. Has a podcast called The Fifth Column. He is ethnically Jamaican, but from Washington, D.C. And he is so fed up with the entire blackness construct that we have in America that despite being very dark-skinned, he just does not identify as black. He'll say, I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm ethnically Jamaican, but
I have no beef with that. I have no beef with that.
I don't either, because we don't want them to identify as us either. So I'm okay with that. You should be
win-win.
able to be who you are.
Yeah, win-win. Do you? I got no beef with
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah, if you're a Jamaican American, it doesn't matter that you were born here. If your parents were born in another country, you're Jamaican American. You should be able to be proud to be a Jamaican American.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go back.
I don't traffic in this racial nonsense that you guys are going crazy over in this country.
Yeah.
And we really don't realize that we're going crazy over it because it's such a part of the culture. We're so much in the water that we don't. Like even someone like me, who I vibrate and resonate towards, like colorblind and post-racial, I think those are ideals worth striving for and worth defending. Even someone like me, it's hard. It would be hard for me to just.
Okay. We talk about race a lot in this country, right? All you have to do is look at any set of economic indicators, and you will understand that the struggle the struggle continues, right? So these folks they want their comfort because they are not us, right? From both sides. Now they want comfort because the white people see them as us, so they feel like they're getting pressure from them not to be us, right? And then they're getting pressure from us not to get in our way, or in some cases be more like us or join the fight. They're getting pressure from both sides. Fine, that's your choice. You came here. You or your family came here. This is where you are. If you don't want to be involved in that fight, at the very least, do no harm. But that's not what these people are doing. It's not what these people are doing.
Michael.
Yes,
Go
ma'am.
ahead. I'm sorry. Did
No,
you
I'm
want to
done. I'm
finish?
done.
Okay, so how insensitive is it to call it racial nonsense? So this Coleman Hughes guy just said that in this country we go crazy talking about race. And he called it racial nonsense. So while everyone in this country and also globally are benefiting off of the racial nonsense, which is Black Americans working for free and enduring the most heinous, atrocious crimes ever committed against humanity for that whole period of time. And that's racial nonsense for us to talk about reparations for having our generational wealth stolen, while everybody else understands the concept of generational wealth. White people get it, right? They keep passing on everything they took from us. The Jamaicans, the Caribbeans, the Africans get it. They're here talking about building generational wealth, but ours is racial nonsense. So for the past 400, almost going on 500 years, everything that was ours is gone. So us discussing what was done to us, by whom, and during what period of time is racial nonsense, while the Japanese and the Native Americans and the I forgot the names of the Alaskans, the Hawaiians, the Gramanians, everyone else has come to the table with their racial nonsense and got compensated and got reparations so that they could be put on a stable and steady path.
Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. That's what these folks are. I recognize part of this is, okay, they see the environment, the way things are going now, and they're trying to carve a space for themselves or get the bag, as John said. But this is, they'll get the wake up call eventually. All right. Anybody else got anything before we move on?
No, let's go.
Right,
I got one thing. I got one thing. Like,
go ahead.
See this, like, because Connie spoke a little bit earlier about hip hop, and this Mr. Hughes is a hip hop artist that was in the subway with his drawers on the pole, and he went from the subway with his drawers on. I'm talking about like he had on grandma drawers. Like that shit was crazy. Shit like a diaper.
Listen, but he had on panty drawers.
he had on somebody grandma drawers. But he went from doing that to being a spokesperson for us at an HR40 reparations hearing in the chamber in the Capitol. Like, see, this is the shit. Like, and
it's wild that none of us could make that recovery. None of us could make that recovery like that.
There's a certain time where you have to say it's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Perfectionism is really a curse of creativity. I'm a philosophy major. It's the only subject I can major in without wanting to blow my brains out in class. I'm releasing an album. It's called My Dick Works Fine.
I'm sorry, what?
It's called My Dick Works Fine.
Okay.
It's mostly rap with a good amount of jazz and some alternative rock in there.
Do what Camille does and say, you know, in a room full of people, well, I'm not black, I'm from New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not anything. Like I'm so in that cultural context.
What part of Jersey you from?
I'm not
I
black,
gotta talk to him.
I'm OJ.
What part of Jersey you from? I'm about to go see him. I'm gonna talk to you, Mr. Hughes, nigga. Where you at?
OJ. Sorry, okay, sorry, I'm sorry, forget it.
Listen. What he's saying, see, this is a training manual. So if you want to, dog whistle to white people that you're down to be, like I said, a Sambolian or an opportunist, then you say words like that. I'm not black. I'm my own person. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and they go, "Oh, we like him. We can talk reckless around him, and he's gonna laugh along with it. Let's hire him." That's how you come from performing in a subway in your panty drawers to getting contracts and being able to testify before Congress.
Yeah.
And we're gonna start demanding. Nobody gets to speak for us but us. Period. That is something
Facts.
we have to demand. I mean, if you keep saying you're not black, then you're not a black American. Don't speak for us.
Yeah, we got plenty of our own, right? We don't need to report them, right? You know what I mean? We got enough of our own. God damn.
Cultural context.
Yeah.
But how much of the difference between the way the typical Jamaican views race and the typical Black American does is a function of the fact that Jamaica is like 90+% people of African descent, and America is more heterogeneous.
She act like she never thought about this.
Do you think if Jamaica were a truly multiracial country, that there would be more of that identification? Or do you think it's something deeper about the culture?
I've actually always thought that it's due to the multiracial history of Jamaica that people don't identify more. Because, I mean, I can't verify this, and that's the thing about a lot of these topics, is that...
I kind of wanted to see where she was going to go with that, but no, Jamaica has Indians, they have Chinese Jamaicans, it's not like everywhere you walk around you see them, but they do.
Yeah, I get that.
So is that what she means? But you can go ahead, MG, and if y'all have anything to say, but I feel like you should let her finish her thought so we can try to figure out what the fuck she's talking about.
Yeah, let her finish her thought, because let her finish her thought.
I think because of, say, the immigration of different groups of people, including Africans, to work, to do hard labor in Jamaica, there's probably more of a struggle among different groups.
Did she really just pull the Republicans? They were indentured, they were workers?
Hard workers.
But she's not talking about the slaves, right? She's not talking about like
that cannot possibly be what she's talking about.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Let her finish. She can.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna be quiet because I really don't understand. I'm gonna let her talk.
All right, let's go. Let's keep going. Let's see where she lands.
Only
right now she's done the plan.
The African struggle, even though only Africans were slaves, but there were also indentured servants that came over, and then there were also the Tainos, or the Amerindians, or the Arawaks. So I think even though Jamaica is 90% Black right now, it wasn't always that way. I think I did some reading, and I'm not sure, because there isn't that much documentation of this stuff, as I'm positive there is for the U.S., that there was, especially after independence and emancipation, a lot of what they would term white flight from Jamaica. And then also, I think a lot of Chinese left, but I'd have to verify all of this stuff. But even though these groups, or some of these groups might have left, and there are all sorts of mixed, like the mixed in-between population that also left, but they're in the history of the culture. So I don't think there's the same relationship between that kind
That's
of
it.
stuff.
That's a good point. I think I agree
All
with
right,
that.
Sam, that's enough.
I think
We're done with this.
the notion
We're
of
done with
privilege
this.
is very much in vogue
We're done
nowadays.
with this. So you don't understand your own history and culture, and you want to come and have input into our culture, which we understand far better than you do.
AMG, her roots looking shallow as a motherfucker, ain't they?
Yeah, boy, she's not. I mean, I was hoping we get a tree. We didn't even get a bush.
Early historians believe that by 1602, the Arawak-speaking Taino tribes were extinct. However, some of the Taino escaped into the forested mountains of the interior, where they mixed with runaway African slaves, and survived free from first Spanish, and then English, rule. The Spanish also transported hundreds of West African people to the island. However, the majority of Africans were brought into Jamaica by the English. In 1655, the English invaded Jamaica, and defeated the Spanish. Some African slaves took advantage of the political turmoil and escaped to the island's interior mountains, forming independent communities which became known as the Maroons.
In those early decades of English rule, the colony began to prosper though. Because Spanish Town had been so severely damaged in the invasion, the capital was unofficially moved to Port Royal, where a trading economy boomed. As a plantation economy developed around cocoa, coffee, and sugarcane, settlement increased. By 1662, there were 4,000 colonists on the island, including exiled felons as well as impoverished Scots and Welshmen, who arrived as indentured laborers.
A major reason for the decline was the British Parliament's 1807 abolition of the slave trade, under which the transportation of slaves to Jamaica after March 1, 1808 was forbidden. The abolition of the slave trade was followed by the abolition of slavery in 1834 and full emancipation of slaves within 4 years. Unable to convert the ex-slaves into a sharecropping tenant class similar to the one established in the post-Civil War South of the United States, planters became increasingly dependent on wage labor and began recruiting workers abroad, primarily from India, China, and Sierra Leone.
The new flag was about to be hoisted over the stadium, the higher rank in accord with the new status of Jamaica as full member of the Commonwealth.
There's no reason to play tricks with me. There's no reason to play tricks with me.
New York City, all of you have had experience in New York City. There are a lot of Hispanics and a lot of African Americans, Hispanic Americans, African Americans. How have East Indians from the Caribbean been relating to the African Americans and to the Hispanic Americans? Have you been having difficulties? What about the Caucasian American? How have you been?
Well, perhaps that depends on what generation you're looking at. In terms of the older generation and a working class generation like us, I think we don't really have much of a problem. If you look at the teenagers and again coming back to the high schools, I think they do have a problem in terms of cultural identity. Indians, Caribbean Indians, they're not whites, but they're not blacks. And they're
Well,
not
is there a lot of
Spanish, so
interaction with the African American and Hispanic American?
In the school system,
in the schools, yes.
Are you all, are East Indians from the Caribbean aware that, for example, on to very recently in the 60s, that black people could not eat in a coffee shop and so forth, and that African Americans made a tremendous contribution in this country to win civil rights? When they enjoy these rights that they enjoy now, is there an awareness in the Indo-Caribbean community in the United States that they owe some of this wonderful life to the struggles of the African-American people, or that consciousness is not there?
How are you going to tell us how to lead our struggle when you don't even know how your struggle was led? What can you possibly offer other than be quiet and keep your head down and just take what you get?
Wait a minute.
And learn how to kiss more butt.
Wait,
Yeah.
I was going to say, did you hear the Coleman whistle? She dropped quite a few things.
Go ahead.
she empathized with the Tainos, the Arawaks, and some other people, right? And she talks about the multicultural struggle. Then she said slavery, indentured servitude. See, you see all those whistles? We all struggled, even white people, you know, they were indentured and there were other ethnicities indentured. They're constantly trying to align with others, but not us. You experience slavery, but you don't want to ever call yourselves the formerly enslaved. We're the only ones everybody wants to call slaves. They literally don't want to embrace the concept of blackness, which is rooted in a struggle for freedom and, you know, dignity and self-determination.
Originally, what he was asking her is like, because Jamaica is a black majority country, do you think that's why you don't want to identify as black? Because it's not necessary in your home country. And she then says, acknowledging that Jamaica is 90% black, that it's because of the history of diversity that she doesn't want to identify as black. What the fuck is she talking about?
We don't speak Sambolian. Stop trying to understand
But I'm saying,
Sambolian.
like, and then when she tries to like back up her claim, she exposes that she doesn't even know the history that she's trying to draw this conclusion off of. Like, it's like, what the fuck is she even talking about?
I'm gonna go because I want John to close it out. Because like I said, I don't have a lot of smoke. The reason why I don't have a lot of smoke, and I'm just gonna say what I said on Clubhouse, and this is probably one of the reasons I left Clubhouse, because I got tired of the circular conversations that were leading nowhere.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's 43 million Black people in this country. Roughly 36 million of them descend from chattel slavery. You can call us freedmen, foundational Black Americans, Native Black Americans, however you want to identify. If you know you come from, you know, U.S. chattel slavery, there's about 36 million of us. There's only 6 million of them. So either you guys are going to come here, join our team as we fight for better conditions, because you'll end up getting them just by default, because when we get reparations, you won't get reparations as a Black immigrant, but white people will look at you and think you're a Black American, and they'll assume you have some money, so they'll treat you a little bit better. People of color and you first generation African immigrants, not all, but a lot of y'all fight me harder about reparations than white people do. So you guys, this isn't how you build alliances. Like white people tell us all the time, this isn't how you build alliances. So at the end of the day, y'all gonna end up out here by yourselves, because the Latinos are connected through all their ethnicities. The whites are connected through all their ethnicities. The Asians are connected through all their ethnicities. You want to be 6 million by yourself? Go ahead.
Makes no sense.
Facts.
Well, on that note, John, take us home, baby.
Yeah, man. This shit is wild. You know, it's the shit that we used to, but I think I just wanted to touch on, like, I guess the thing that they say we got no culture, and how other Black immigrants, they often say like they're family centered and that's why they're more successful than us, blah, blah, blah. Listen, our whole existence, like as soon as we got free from slavery, like our whole existence has been trying to get our family together. It's people that walk literally thousands of miles across the country, the different states on foot with no shoes on to go find their family. Like, you know what I mean? This is the reason why the cookout is such a big thing. It's about the family reunion. Even if our families is dysfunctional, Black folk like to get it. Being invited to the cookout is, even though it was a joke, but it's like you be inviting you to our family. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's our culture. That's what it really represents. You know what I'm saying? So you want to say they ain't got no culture? That's bullshit. And then I also just wanted to touch on, like, when she was like Black Americans, like I don't see Black Americans suffering. Have you ever been to Mississippi? Like, where the fuck you from? Like, you ever been to the ghetto?
Have you been to California?
Like,
have you been
to the ghetto? This baby's walking around with no shoes on. It's fucked up. And it's not, and their moms is working 2 jobs. They gotta work this shitty job at Family Dollar. They gotta work this other shitty ass job. And it's people that live in the ghetto, that live in the projects that work. A lot of them work. We got disproportionate unemployment rate. But a lot, that means that, a majority of us is employed, motherfucker. Like, So it's like you're not really getting you're not understanding the depth and the history of what the fuck is going on. People that talk like this, like, and I got a lot of Caribbean friends, like, you know what I'm saying? I grew up in New Jersey. Like, a lot of my close friends is Haitian. I mean, like, of course, Black American friends, a few friends from Jamaica, a few friends that family came from Trinidad. You know what I mean? Like, and they kind of understand, even when they folded in with us, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, but they do have aspects of their family that are kind of like, yo, stay away from this man. Like, what the fuck? Why, motherfucker? Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, so that thing does go on, but, you know, so shit like this, man, like, Black immigrants, man, like, real talk, like, if you really an ally, man, I gotta tighten up with this bullshit, man. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, it's like, man, if you don't understand that lifting us up is beneficial to you, when the police beat your head the fuck open, you know what I mean? Like, a mistake, usually that's what happens. They just anti-Black, because that comes from our history as well, but they bust your head open and we don't come to save you, don't be crying. I don't want to hear that shit. Oh my God, I told you. You know what I mean? So that's the whole thing, is like, if you want to do it, let's do it. Like, but stop shitting on us and stepping on us to get where you got to go. Like, it's fucked up. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got, man. That's it.
Yeah. So. Thank you, Connie, for hanging out with us at Reset Race. Thank you all for listening and watching, or however you inhale this. Thank you, everybody, and hopefully we see you next week. And that's it.
The notion of privilege is very much in vogue nowadays, and I think, especially white privilege. I think white privilege is one of 1,000 different kinds of privilege in life. To the extent that it exists, to the extent that it is an advantage to be white in America rather than Black, which is arguable.
Listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, back on the grill again. We grilling them, You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. Be focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to U.S. Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings. We are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one. Cousin Mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire. Anti-Black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country. To win, you need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest. which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.